Have you ever stopped to wonder why we keep repeating the very things we know will harm us? Why we crave exactly what destroys us? And why silence feels so uncomfortable, as if it's trying to reveal truths we've spent our whole lives avoiding? Nietzsche said that the human being is like a rope stretched between the animal and the overman. And maybe addiction is exactly that. Us, standing there on this tightrope, trying to balance between impulse and purpose. Carl Jung didn't see addiction as weakness. For him, it was a message from the unconscious, a cry for help from the part of our soul that has been suffocated. And maybe that's exactly why you're here right now, listening to these words while the house is silent and only you and your ghosts are still awake. Addiction doesn't arrive screaming, it comes disguised. It wears the mask of pleasure, of quick relief. It shows up in the cigarette you light without thinking, in the finger that scrolls through your phone as if on autopilot, in the glass you fill without hesitation. But what almost no one realizes is that every impulse has an origin. And most of the time, behind desire lies a pain you've tried to ignore. That pain doesn't want to be avoided, it wants to be heard. And that's what this video wants to be. Not a mirror to show your face, but to reveal what's behind your eyes. If you have the courage to stay until the end, you'll understand why you could never stop. And more importantly, why after today you might never have to fight the same way again. This is not about willpower or control. It's about listening. It's about self-knowledge. It's about stopping the escape from what Jung called the shadow. And if you've made it this far, it means you've already taken the first step, because only those who truly listen discover what addiction is trying to say. Addiction doesn't come with chains or threats. It arrives with gentle, almost friendly promises. You've suffered enough for today, just a little relief. And like someone reaching for a blanket on a cold night, you give in. You light the cigarette, drink, eat, scroll, and for a moment life feels lighter. But behind that curtain, something much bigger is happening. For Jung, addiction was a symbol, a code, a way for the unconscious to scream what you can't say out loud. Think about it. If you were at peace, whole, with no gaps, what would there be to numb? Addiction is not the problem. It's the symptom. It's the reflection of an emptiness you can't yet name. And the most frightening thing is not the craving. It's the silence that comes before it. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." But Jung went further. He said it's not enough to control yourself. You must discover what truly controls you from within. The problem is, in our culture, we still treat addiction as laziness, lack of discipline, or a moral flaw. But tell me, how can you control something you don't even understand? How do you defeat an enemy that wears your own face as a disguise? Think of addiction as a mask. On the outside, it's what you consume: cigarettes, alcohol, your phone, food. But on the inside, it's what consumes you: unresolved needs, scars of trauma, desperate attempts to escape yourself. The more you run, the stronger it grows. And the more you fight it with brute force, the more it feeds on your resistance. Jung said, "What you resist persists." Many times we think we're fighting addiction, but in reality we're just tightening the blindfold over our own eyes. Have you noticed how addiction seems to have its own ritual? It has a time, a place, a smell, a temperature, almost like a script that repeats itself. A theater where the lead role is not pleasure, but forgetting. Forgetting yourself for a few minutes can bring relief, but over time it becomes a prison. That's why so many people feel weak, defeated, even ashamed. But the truth is, the enemy is not your strength, it's your pain. And pain cannot be conquered through brute force. It must be faced with presence. Before trying to quit, you must understand. Before resisting, you must listen. When we look closely, addiction stops being an enemy and becomes a messenger. There is something sacred in this nameless pain, something primitive, ancestral, almost mythical. Addiction in that sense is the echo of a call you've forgotten to answer. It doesn't matter if we're talking about cigarettes, alcohol, your phone, or sugar. None of these are the real problem. What matters is what you are trying to silence when you smoke, drink, scroll, or open the fridge. Jung called this the shadow. Everything you hide from yourself. Everything once judged, rejected, or suppressed. It's this shadow that screams in the silent hours of the night, when the glow of the screen exposes your loneliness, or when a sip of alcohol warms the absence of an embrace. It's not just the body acting, it's the soul begging to be heard. Addiction is not irrational. It is consistent with your pain. It's a distorted way of seeking balance. It could be a child who grew up without hugs, an exhausted adult who never feels enough, a swallowed trauma, a loss never mourned, or a loneliness so ancient it has become part of the scenery. When the urge comes, try asking, where is this hunger coming from? What emptiness am I trying to fill right now? Which part of me is asking for attention? Perhaps in answering, you'll realize addiction was never really about pleasure, but about an attempt to survive. There is a strange and profound beauty in what Jung called the shadow. It's not here to destroy you, it's here to be integrated. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And addiction is exactly that, an urgent, ungraceful attempt to force you to look at that darkness. Every time you try to run away, the shadow seems to smile, because it knows that as long as you resist, it will keep sending signs, stronger, louder, more desperate. The most uncomfortable part of all this is realizing that your compulsion is not against you, it is for you. It's your soul screaming, look at me, I exist, I need to be heard. Maybe that's why so many attempts to quit have failed, because you treated addiction as an enemy to be destroyed, when in truth it's a wounded part of you that only ever wanted a hug. If we are honest, every addiction is a distorted cry for love. Yes, love, strange as it may sound. It's the need to feel something, to be noticed, to be soothed, even if only for a few seconds. And when you begin to listen to that with compassion, something shifts. You create a space within yourself, a small pause, and in that space, something new can be born. From that moment on, it's no longer about getting rid of the addiction, but about discovering what it's trying to return to you. And most of the time, what it wants to return is something you lost along the way. Your purest, truest connection to who you really are. It never arrives with noise. It comes slowly, with familiar steps, like an old acquaintance you wish you could forget, but who knows how to walk in without knocking. It waits. It watches. And at the moment you are most tired, most vulnerable, it whispers, it's okay, just one more time. And you give in, not out of weakness, but out of exhaustion. Jung saw addiction as a symbolic act. Repeating a compulsive behavior isn't just habit. It's an unconscious attempt to restore an emotional order that was lost. Like an ancient ritual of survival, except instead of offering connection to the sacred, it delivers quick relief, followed by emptiness. Think of how many times you've repeated the same script. Stress rises, loneliness tightens, silence approaches, and you seek the same relief, the same gesture, the same path. It's almost liturgical, like lighting candles in a chapel dedicated to forgetting. What no one tells you is that this ritual carries a hidden wisdom. Behind every compulsive behavior lies an emotional code waiting to be deciphered. The problem is, most people try to kill the behavior but never listen to the message it carries. It's like destroying the alarm because the sound bothers you, without realizing it was warning you that there's a fire in your soul. Jung's invitation is radical. Observe the ritual. Step into it with awareness. See the repetition as if it were a play unfolding inside you. And in that space between impulse and action, discover that freedom exists. You don't need to erase the ritual. You need to reinvent it. If every night you seek something to numb yourself, maybe it's time to ask, what's hurting right now? Which part of me feels so alone that it needs this? What am I trying not to feel? After all, no one gets addicted to pleasure. We get addicted to running from pain. And this is where awakening begins. When you understand that addiction is not just an escape, but also a map to the parts of you that have been silenced, ignored, or forgotten. Jung called this process individuation, the path to becoming whole. And that path runs through the shadow, not as an enemy, but as a guide. Imagine transforming the impulse into a portal. If the urge to smoke arises, take a deep breath and say, I see you. I hear your message, but today I'll answer differently. If your phone calls to you before bed, turn it off and write one sentence. What did I lose today? Small gestures like these, repeated with presence, begin to dismantle the old ritual and create a new one. A ritual that doesn't fragment you, but integrates you. It's not easy, but it's possible. And every time you act differently, even for a few seconds, you prove to yourself that you are no longer trapped. It's not about killing the desire, but about consciously choosing what to do with it. Addiction stops being a problem and becomes a key. And when you find that key, the door begins to open. There comes a moment when desire stops being the enemy and becomes a mirror, a moment of clarity when you understand. What once brought you down now reveals where your strength lies. Jung didn't believe in repression as a solution. He believed in transmutation, a concept from the ancient alchemists. Every impure metal can be turned into gold, provided it passes through the right fire. He brought this idea into the soul. Every pain can be turned into wisdom, if you have the courage and awareness to walk through it. This is how the true alchemy of desire is born. Have you noticed how desire arrives charged with energy? It vibrates in your chest, warms your throat, quickens your thoughts. And what do most people do? They either run from it, try to fight it, or drown in guilt. But the secret is not in escaping. The secret is in staying. Addiction wants you to believe there are only two paths, to give in or to resist. But there is a third, to transmute. When the impulse appears, it carries raw, powerful, pure life energy. And like any energy, it can be redirected. Jung said, "You cannot free yourself from something by avoiding it. You can only be free by going through it." So when desire comes, stop, breathe, feel. Ask yourself, where is this coming from? Which part of me is trying to speak right now? What pain is asking to be heard? In that moment, what was once just impulse begins to turn into information. What was once just craving becomes symbolic language. You're no longer on autopilot. You're creating awareness, and that awareness is worth gold. But take note, it's not about replacing one addiction with another distraction. It's not about swapping cigarettes for gum or alcohol for hours of TV. It's about replacing the unconscious ritual with a sacred ritual, a gesture of reconnection with yourself. If desire comes before bed, maybe it's loneliness trying to reveal itself. Instead of numbing it, write a letter to yourself. If the impulse comes in the middle of stress, maybe it's your body saying it's tired of always being pushed to perfection. Instead of running, lie on the floor, close your eyes, and breathe for 2 minutes. Simple as that, deep as that. Alchemy is not a show, it's a process. It's intimacy with your own pain. And little by little, you realize that the part of you that once said, "I can't take this anymore," begins to say, "I can stay here." You stop reacting automatically and start creating. You go from prisoner to alchemist. You've made it this far. You've heard every word, felt every silence, and walked through shadows that many people spend a lifetime avoiding. That's not nothing, that's everything. Carl Jung didn't believe in shortcuts or quick fixes. He believed in the value of going deep. And that's what you've done. You dove in. Maybe for the first time, you've listened to your desire without fear. Maybe now you can see that addiction was never the real enemy. It was the echo of a forgotten part of you, hidden in the dark. And now you know strength isn't in repression, but in integration. It's not in defeating something, but in embracing it. From today on, every impulse is an invitation. Every discomfort is a guide. Every small conscious choice is a step toward your freedom. The question is no longer, how do I stop doing this? But which part of me needs to be heard right now? And that question, asked with honesty, is worth more than any rule of abstinence. If this video moved you, share in the comments. What has your dependency been trying to tell you? Who knows? Writing it down might just be the first step towards something new. And if you're not subscribed yet, think about it. You just walked through the unconscious with me, and you're going to leave without hitting like. Even YouTube would be surprised. So do your part, like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the bell before the algorithm throws you another 5 ways to be more productive video. The videos appearing now on the screen, I won't tell you what they're about, but one of them might be exactly the mirror you've been avoiding for a long time.